I just found out that Obama had my wires tapped. That's not looking into something. He says it happened.
Look, I think the bigger thing is you guys are always telling us to take the media seriously. Well, we are today. We're taking the reports that places like the New York Times, Fox News, BBC, multiple outlets have reported this. All we're saying is let's take a closer look. Let's look into this. If this happened, if this is accurate, this is the biggest overreach and the biggest scandal.
The President of the United States is accusing the former president of wiretapping him.
I think that this is, again, something that if this happened, Martha,
if.
I agree.
Why is the president saying it did happen?
Look, I think he is going off of information that he's seen that has led him to believe that this is a very real potential. And if it is, this is the greatest overreach and the greatest abuse of power that I think we've ever seen in a huge...
How does he not contradict himself when he's trying to get this thing to go through the Supreme Court?
Look, again, I don't know how many times I have to answer this question today, but I'll try to do it one more time. I think that the president isn't concerned with what you call it. He's concerned with national security and protecting people in this country. Whether you call it a travel ban.
The court says, he goes from one extreme to the next and goes back to the first. And the Supreme
He's not concerned with being politically correct. He's concerned with protecting the American people. I mean, that's the bottom line here.
Where's Sean?
I'm sorry?
Where's Sean?
He's here today.
Why didn't he come out?
This is part of my job as well. Did you guys ever ask any of the other deputy press secretaries when they filled in?
Position now?
Yes, them all.
I'm sorry?
Position now, or you just...
I mean, he is taking on a little bit of extra duty at this point, so I think it's fairly...
Has his position changed, though?
It's probably upgraded at this point, given that we don't have a communications director. I did not say that at all. I'm just filling in for the day, April. There are a lot of demands on his schedule, particularly given the fact that there's not a communications director, and this is part of my job as well, and when I'm needed, I'll step in. Nothing...
Just prove we need an independent counsel to investigate this.
Not at all. Joe, we've had almost an entire year that they have spent, the House committees, the Senate committees, the FBI, everyone has looked into this, and everybody comes to the same conclusion.
Yes,
that
there's something
you're actually not telling the truth right now.
Mike Barnacle,
wow,
you're next, but the conclusion they've come to is that there's something there. You've got Richard Burr, who's running the Senate Intel Committee, talking about how deeply troubled he is. Senator Ben Sass, another Republican from Nebraska, serving on the Judiciary Committee, talking about the very troubling findings, and many others, Mike Barnacle, talking about how this investigation needs to go forward. The Senate investigation, Mike, in fact, is just starting to take off right now.
Yeah, and every bit of it, and I hope that the Senate completes it so that they can come to the same conclusion that everyone else has, and that every person has said, whether it's been Clapper or others, that there is no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
The investigation, though, has just started, Sarah. That's like a prosecutor starting a criminal case saying, "Well, no, we don't have any evidence yet, but that's why we have an investigation."
But news outlets get to go on day after day and cite unnamed sources, use stories without sources, have, you mentioned the Scaramucci story where they had to have reporters resign.
Come on. You're inflaming everybody right here, right now with those words. This administration has done that as well. Why in the name of heavens? Any one of us, right, are replaceable, and any one of us, if we don't get it right, the audience has the opportunity to turn the channel or not read us. You have been elected to serve for 4 years at least. There's no option other than that. We're here to ask you questions.
Right.
We're here to provide the answers. And what you just did is inflammatory to people all over the country who look at it and say, see, once again, the president's right and everybody else out here is fake media. And everybody in this room is only trying to do their job.
Well, I disagree completely. First of all, I think if anything has been inflamed, it's the dishonesty that often takes place by the news media. And I think it is outrageous for you to accuse me of inflaming a story when I was simply trying to respond to his question, Kevin. And I think he's been very clear that when he gets attacked, he's going to hit back. I think the American people elected somebody who's tough, who's smart, and who's a fighter. And that's Donald Trump. And I don't think that it's a surprise to anybody that he fights fire with fire. He's not going to step back.
He's showed that, and that's exactly what he did today.
If I could just follow on that, Sarah, a couple of the criticisms from supporters of the president have been that this particular tweet was beneath the dignity of the office. Where does the president draw that line on the dignity of the office?
Look, I think that he shows that every day in the decisions that he's making, the focus and the priorities he's laid out in his agenda, but he's not going to sit back and be attacked by the liberal media, Hollywood elites, and when they hit him, he's going to hit back.
Sarah, I have a healthcare question, but on this, just one other aspect of it. Some have suggested in their tweet response or public announcements today that the president misconstrued one of the messages that should have been gathered from a shooting that involved Steve Scalise and others, that the hostility of the verbal environment can create an atmosphere of violence. I'm not saying that, but members of Congress have said that about this particular tweet. I know that episode affected the president and those here at the White House personally very importantly and deeply. Do you have any reaction to that sentiment that conversations like this create an atmosphere that is either dangerous or one we need to avoid?
The president in no way, form or fashion has ever promoted or encouraged violence. If anything, quite the contrary. And he was simply pushing back and defending himself. Again, Kristen, I think I've asked, and this question has been asked, and I've answered it several times.
Do his tweets help to unify the country to do what he said he wanted to see happen in the wake of that shooting?
Look, again, I think that the president is pushing back against people who attack him day after day after day. Where is the outrage on that? You guys are constantly coming and asking, like, is this okay? He does it one time. This is day after day after day. And it's not just the president. The only person that I see a war on is this president and everybody that works for him.
There are two questions to follow up on that. One is that I understand your point, but he is the president of the United States. They are cable news anchors, so he has to stand to a higher standard. One. And two, you talk about criticism. He said that former President Obama wasn't born in this country, right? So he clearly was a part of criticizing the past president, who was not immune to criticism himself. So I wonder how you make that argument.
Again, I think I've been pretty clear that when the president gets hit, he's going to hit back harder, which is what he did here today.
Doesn't he have to meet a higher standard than cable news anchors? Doesn't he have to meet a higher standard than cable news anchors?
Look, I don't think you can expect someone to be personally attacked day after day, minute by minute, and sit back. Look, the American people elected a fighter. They didn't elect somebody to sit back and do nothing. They knew what they were getting when they voted for Donald Trump, and he won overwhelmingly.
Sarah, how is insulting a woman on Twitter being a fighter?
What about the impact of statements like this on his effectiveness? There was a Marist poll this week that said 68% of registered voters said the president's tweets are reckless and distracting. Only 22% say that they're effective and informative. And Republicans on this question are split down the middle. Half of Republicans say that they're reckless and distracting. So how can you argue that this is something the president must do?
I answered this question yesterday in regards to the poll. I think anytime the president has a chance to speak directly to the American people, it's a good thing.
Sarah, as a woman, how do you feel about the president attacking another woman specifically for her looks, and what does that show as an example to how men should be treating other women?
Look, everybody wants to make this an attack on a woman and equality. What about the constant attacks that he receives or the rest of us? I'm a woman, and I've been attacked by this show multiple times, but I don't cry foul because of it. I think that, you want to create this false narrative. One hand, it's like, let's treat everybody equally, and on the other hand, they attack, and he responds, and apparently that's wrong. I'm sorry, guys, I've answered this question.
Too, and this kind of gets to the point that's been made, and
exactly, this is the point that's been made, so I'm not sure why we're continuing to answer
talking
the
about
same
the
question.
president as a fighter. I just want to put it in, because you talk about being personally affected by all of this as well, and that nothing is wrong with the president fighting fire with fire is the argument that you're making. So I would ask this to you sort of on a personal level. You have stood here and talked about your family from this podium. Are you going to tell your kids this behavior is okay?
Look, I've been asked before when it comes to role models as a person of faith. I think we all have one perfect role model. And when I'm asked that question, I point to God, I point to my faith, and that's where I would tell my kids to look. None of us.
But another poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know. Fake news. Fake news. Fake news.
Fake.